At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, how's it going? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast, whether you're on Circle, Patreon, or Facebook. Thank you so very much for the support, but also all of you who are here watching, listening, and supporting. Thank you so very much. This week has been awesome, man. I've been out here in Colorado. I did a couple different sessions for my 8-hour communications course, and Aurora 911 was hosting it, and I'm now here within the center of Aurora 911 with all of these awesome 911 professionals recording some episodes, doing some highlights of the center and such. And I am here with Joey, and he is a professional development specialist with Aurora 911. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me here today. Appreciate you.
Yes, man. This has been an excellent week. There's a lot of stuff that we were going through, and I mean, you were right up front. And you're just going through all the stuff. All of you were very engaging. I think that was one of the best things is when you're in class and you have every single group that's there that are actually engaging and getting into it.
It's so important for us. And I think that's just the culture here is we're always learning. We're always helping one another. And when we have an opportunity like this, you know, especially with the I Am 911 movement and to have an opportunity to learn about communication, I mean, the buy-in's there.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And I tell people too, when they ask, they're like, you know, what are some of the techniques that we're going to be learning? And I look at them and I'll go, so this is completely different than what you think. And I always love when I start explaining what it is, especially with all of you in the first class as well, the look on your faces of this is not what I thought we were going to be doing. I didn't realize we were going to be getting into our feelings a bit as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, vulnerability is so important, you know, and I think you showcase that so well with all the stories and just being vulnerable and how it connects us all. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, every single one of you, you know, sharing stories, even those who weren't sharing stories, like you could see that everyone was feeling it and connecting. And that is what the course is basically all about, man. You know, all of us coming together, learning from each other, learning about ourselves in a way, and also kind of thinking about how we got to where we are, but from the beginning of that journey. So for you, how did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
Oh man. Well, that's a pretty long story.
Yeah.
I'll sum it up. So growing up, I had to call 911 a few times. And, you know, grew up in a family with domestic violence, and just a very lonely environment for myself. And I do remember the few times I did have to call 911 were the few times that I did feel safe. And I did feel like someone was there for me. And it always surprised me that it was just a stranger. It was just a voice.
Right.
And so that impacted me hugely just throughout my life and remembering that. and studied sociology in college because I loved people.
Yeah.
And getting out of that, my mom was actually a dispatcher for about 5 years. And so talking about what I wanted to do, I didn't really know. She recommended that. And so did a few other people, just because I've been so calm, cool, and collected my whole life.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, that's perfect for
Yeah.
the profession. And right, I knew I wanted to help people. I didn't know what went into 911 though. So it was a big surprise to me to learn that. But I knew I just wanted to help people. And at the end of the day, I never wanted anybody to feel the ways that I felt when I was younger and growing up. And I wanted to be that stranger who was there for people when nobody else was. And
Wow.
so that's been huge for me, just to remember along the way.
So you're one of probably a handful or so that are like second generation,
Yeah.
coming in and doing this, and also, using your experience. One of the things that we were talking about yesterday as well is how, sometimes it feels like, some of these calls are meant for us.
Mm.
And, because of whatever experience we might have growing up or any other things that we've gone through. And for you, how you shared that. And thank you for, being able to share that as well.
Absolutely.
You're able to use some of that experience for anybody who's calling in with a similar one. What that's like, and you have kind of that deeper connection that fast with that person to build that rapport, that trust, as you were saying, to be able to get them help as fast as possible.
Yeah. And you're right. I tend to get those calls from
Mhm.
kids who are in a domestic violence situation, which, like, send me. Like, I'm the perfect person for that. And I can relate and really have that empathy for them. So those are the calls that are the toughest for me,
Mhm.
but the ones that fill my cup the most, because I get to be the person who was there for me when I
Right.
was younger.
Oh man, I love that.
Yeah.
So you end up getting that basically that calling, not just from your mom, but from other people, to come into this profession, and second generation coming in. What is that like in the beginning? Did you have a sit along? Did you actually got to go in there, or even like with your mom? I mean, did you ever go in and kind of see how things worked?
Not really. So she was a dispatcher while she was pregnant with me. And
Oh,
then
okay.
She got out of the profession
Right.
as soon as she had me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was able to do some sit-alongs. And funny enough, I never really talked to my mom about what the job was. She
Mhm.
kind of really sold it to me as like, you really get to help people, and it's tough, but like, you have the heart for it. And I can see that. So I didn't really know much going into it. And so sitting down for the first time and looking at, the 15 different screens that they have, it was overwhelming. It was terrifying. But it was also, I love challenges like that, opportunity to help and learn something new, but it was definitely worrisome at the beginning.
Oh, I can. Yes, you take me back to, and I mentioned it yesterday as well, but you take me back to walking in that first time, seeing all those monitors, seeing everyone working like a well-oiled machine, but also doing things that you would think an octopus is doing, because hands are moving all over the place, and they're just so calm and collected and doing stuff. And at least the center that I was in, which is probably half the size of this one here. I mean,
Yeah.
there's only like 5 consoles. When you're typing and stuff, you can yell over to the person who's on main radios while you're typing, but just so that they have that information a lot faster. And sometimes with bigger centers kind of like this as well, and even more, there's one in the county that I live in. I've been in their center. They have about 30 to 40 people on at one time. And I've sat at a console and just kind of looked up, and it's like a hive,
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
reminds me of like the Wall Street picture.
right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You sit up and you just see everybody there in their cubicles and stuff, or consoles rather, doing their thing. But yeah, it can be overwhelming. The monitors, all the hundreds of mice. There's not that many, but it feels like it when you're first getting in there.
That's
Yes. So now you're going through training and everything, and let's kind of reflect on what it was like when you were taking those calls in the beginning. Like, I mean, not just walking in and seeing everything and being overwhelmed, but now it's your turn,
Yeah.
and you're just kind of waiting. What was that like?
Oh man. I mean, it was a roller coaster of emotions. It was exciting. It was terrifying. I had about a week-long academy,
Mhm.
and then after that, it's hopping right into the phones. and answering calls. And I remember my first call. Oh man, it was a male who was calling, and his wife had just passed. And for that being my first call, I was like, you know what? The thoughts of this might not be for me were swirling in my head.
Oh man.
But I did have, some support there, a little bit from my CTO and supervisor. And right, sometimes, and somebody told me this very early on, which stuck with me, was you're not going to be able to save everyone. And sometimes our job is just to be there,
right,
and just to listen and let them know help is coming. So once I was able to really understand that early on, within that first week, being told that, I was like, okay, like, even though it doesn't feel good, it doesn't mean, it's wrong.
Right.
And that was huge. That was one of the thoughts that really kept me going, because I'm sure a lot of people relate to this, but I didn't have the best CTO.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't feel like a person kind of going through training, just, somebody there. And I had, CTO that would be like, hey, messing with me a little bit, but would be like, hey, Chick-fil-A is hiring if this doesn't work out.
Oh, geez.
And, it didn't affect me that much, but
right.
I'm like, a lot of things, playing sports growing up, like a lot of things felt like they came fairly easy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I still had to work for them, but this job was not easy. It didn't come easy for me. I had to work my butt off for it. And I mean, I'm grateful for that, because if I didn't get through that, mental roadblock, I wouldn't be here today.
Right. It's always good to have definitely that support. I mentioned this yesterday as well. After I got through that slump of training myself,
Mm-hmm.
one of my trainers ended up saying, I'm going to throw you in the water, which is basically the equivalent of you're going to be taking the call. That's the correlation there, and you're going to take in a little water, but I'm not going to let you drown.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember early on one of those calls, and this also was 3.5, 4 years of experience that I had already. But now I'm at a dispatch center where there's a bunch of us there, and I'm trying to learn how to work as a team, but also a different call volume completely, and types of calls. And I remember taking this domestic call in this old CAD system that we had. So we had to memorize. I mean, everywhere you got to memorize stuff, right? Because it's a lot faster if you memorize it. It's good to know where to find it, but if you memorize it, you can move that much faster through the system. But with this system specifically, you had to have the incident type, the township code, and the ORI. You had to have that in before you could make the call actually go through. Yes.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, during this domestic call, I couldn't remember the basically like the acronym for domestic, because it was DOME.
Oh.
And for whatever reason, it wasn't coming out. They eventually changed it, and it wasn't because of me. It was because we all collectively, years later, I was a supervisor, and we all collectively were like, can we just change that to DV?
Yeah.
Why wasn't it that to begin with?
So
yes, exactly. So years prior, I'm taking this call. I couldn't remember DOME. So I'm trying to put it in. I'm like, nope, that's not what it is. And the call is still going. This domestic doesn't stop. They don't pause for whatever is going. They're still, yelling. And I remember cupping my my microphone on my headset, and I looked over at my trainer and I said, "You're going to have to take this, because I can't get this in. I need you to jump in." And she goes, "No." And I remember looking at her, like my eyes popped open, and she goes, "You can do this." She goes, "You've got this."
Wow.
Just kind of think. And I was like, okay. And for whatever reason, whatever it was, like it popped into my head. I got it in, and I had remembered everything that was going on. So I typed all of that in and stuff. We got the complaint in. Officers were already going because they could hear what was going on. So it was already going. I just had to get that complaint card in, and I ended up finishing that. So for me, that was a learning experience early on as well. So every domestic call, like those were my type of calls.
Yeah.
Like I've asked people before, and it's going to sound weird to those who are watching and listening because you don't come from where we come from, but I would ask, what are your favorite calls to take? And what I mean by favorite is more so the ones that are more of a, not so much a high priority, but where you are putting basically all of you into it in kind of more of a deeper situation. Not that you're not putting yourself all the way into it, but what I'm getting at is it's not like a barking dog complaint.
Yeah.
It's not a fireworks complaint. It's a domestic call, or it's a medical, or it's some of those where it's you're just really working with people more to help save them or get help to them faster.
Yeah, so definitely not alarm calls.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Definitely
Even though
not
they're
that.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm also the peer support coordinator here, so
Mhm.
I put a lot of emphasis on emotion and feeling and how you feel about the job, and that's where I feel like I connect most with people. And so those, my favorite calls are, I'd have to say not a specific call type, but anybody who's really like you can hear that brokenness over the
Yes.
phone,
Right.
and you can hear that just that hurt and that pain that they're going through. And yeah, I love the quote, turn your pain into a purpose. And so that, the pain
Love that.
it's my motto for life pretty much. So, that pain I felt when I was younger growing up and even throughout my adult life, like I can use that to connect with people, and not that I have to fix their problem, but I just have to let them know that they're not alone, and that I too have felt that at one point. And so I love being able to, when appropriate, share some of those experiences that I've had with people over the phone.
Mhm.
And, there's that line between professionalism and, being human. And in those situations, I think it's professional and it's human just to say, like, I know what you're going through. I've felt some of the same things, or I've gone through a situation like that. Like, you can make it through this. And this is not the end. This is not, this is tough right now, but I'm here with you. And I can't pull you out, but I can be by your side through this right now.
That is awesome. Man, I couldn't have said it any better. Like, well done, man. Wow. So, kind of thinking about all this time that you've been in dispatch and everything, you not only are taking calls and all of this part of the peer support, but kind of explain to those who might not know what a professional development specialist is. Like, what all do you do?
Yeah, that's a wide range of tasks and responsibilities that we have. Sometimes, we're wearing 3-4 hats
Mhm.
at a different time. So we oversee the training department. So we're involved in the academy. We send out continuing education. We do quality assurance and quality improvement, giving feedback to employees. We do community outreach as well. And we also work the floor. We also work dispatch, call taking, to help us keep up our skills as trainers. Because if we don't do that, then we don't know exactly what people need.
Yeah.
So that's basically professional development in a nutshell. And it extends more past professional, because we like to focus on the people here at Aurora 911. And that's kind of our vessel, right? If you can, like a car, I like to think about, like,
Yeah.
you maintain the car, you're, constantly changing the oil, you're checking things. Like, we have to do that for our people and check on them, make sure that they're able to run smoothly and perform the job well. So we're basically mechanics of the center.
I love the way you put that, man. That's a great way to put it. Now, do you feel like, in a way, and no offense to any other agency that's out there, but that's what kind of sets you apart from
Yeah.
maybe a lot of centers? Because I mean, there are some, I would say, that do similar things, but there's also a lot there that are still part of that, for lack of a better way to put it, that kind of that old guard that
Mhm.
hasn't come out of it yet. That hopefully, there's some changes, but do you feel like that's kind of, some of the stuff that sets you guys apart?
Absolutely. I mean, we can spend more time and more resources on improving
Mhm.
and also recognizing our people. And I've been at a few other centers, and we didn't have a professional development position, and it put a lot more weight on the people who were trying to engage in training and teach academies, because you also have this dual responsibility of your main job is working, the channel or
Yeah.
call taking. And so you don't have time to really perfect that training and make that training individualized to the person. So it's kind of just generic training. So I think we do have a leg up in that sense of why our culture's so good, and why we can, pump out trainings and get our people to where we know they can be.
Dang.
Yeah.
I was looking at the camera because what I was going to say was, are you guys hiring? Because I'm sure, like a lot of people, they listen to this and they listen to how other centers are doing things, and whether it's someone who's wanting to switch from one center to the other, or just simply watching who wants to get into dispatching or public safety or whichever. This is stuff that you want to hear, that you want to come into. I mean, shit, I might come out of retirement myself. Like,
I'm sure we'll find a spot.
Right. So, and I'm going to be taking some B-roll while I'm here as well. But I want to ask really quick before we go kind of into the wrap up of this, which is, it's been awesome to sit here, and even just for this amount, we're going to have to do a part 2, man, where we have more time to talk some more stuff out. Or even I have another show that I do is called the Dispatchers Roundtable, where I have other people on as panelists and we go over topics. So I'll have to have you on that one as well. So what are some of the things also that you have here that other places don't have? And what I mean by that is, for example, there's like a fancy coffee machine.
Oh,
is that right?
There is, and it's free.
Well,
yeah, best things in life
better.
are free.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, you can get a vanilla cappuccino, you can get hot chocolate, you can get just hot water for your tea. I use it every day, maybe multiple times a day. I really like the vanilla, so that's probably why it runs out so quickly. But yeah, we have the coffee machine. We have a disco ball, and
yes,
it came up during TC week about over a year ago, and we all liked it so much because it just, like, you walk in and you're like, all right, like, it's a party, we're gonna save lives today.
Hell yes, I love that.
And we have new furniture, so each desk has its own controls. You can stand, they're ergonomic. And they also have like dim lights that you can change the colors of, so you can, like, maybe whatever mood you're in. You're like, I need to put blue on today because I'm feeling cool, calm, and collected. We have a popcorn machine. We have all these little things that help us. But I think the biggest thing, and why I love it so much, I've been here at Aurora for 2 years, is the leadership team here knows the value of the people and the community. And it's hard because when you don't know the value of your people or the community, you don't know how to treat it.
Right.
Because you don't know what that value is. And so, even walking in here, it was new for me to be like, oh my gosh, like, you trust me with this, or you want to help me. And not to say that's how it wasn't like that before, but I think just being able to understand that if I fall, like, someone's going to catch me here.
Right.
And I think that's the reason why I stay. That's the reason why I love it here. This is the reason why I want to, keep working here and make others feel that way, because for me in this profession, you need that, because you hear so much bad throughout the day, all the negativity.
Very true.
But to turn around and look at the person next to you and be like, if I needed anything, I know that person would be there in a heartbeat. So that's the biggest part.
Continuation of the PSA.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's genuine, man. I can hear it. I feel it from you. And the fact that you genuinely love what you do. And that is awesome. So my last question for you as we go into the wrap up of this episode is, and I asked you this actually yesterday in class, and I'm going to ask you now. And I told everyone when I asked this question, I was like, you don't have to answer this now. You can take it home with you. But here we are, and I'm going to ask you the question. So if with all the knowledge that you have now, these 8 years that you've been in public safety and such, if you could go back in time to talk to yourself in the beginning, not to change anything, but just to simply talk to yourself, what is some of the advice that you would say?
Man, I think the first thing I would say, because I'm one of those people who self-doubts a lot, and I'm always self-reflecting, is to trust yourself and bet on yourself, because I didn't realize how much I had to give until I got into this profession, and just to trust the process, especially at the beginning, man, when it was tough and when I thought about quitting, and when, I'm driving home in tears because I'm like, I didn't do it right. My CTO's mad at me. All these things.
Yeah.
Is to just trust the process, and that you are where you need to be and you're there for a reason. Because that was hard to believe at the beginning, and nobody told me that. But now that I realize it today, like, I don't have a ceiling. Like, it's just, you keep going up and up and up, and you have the people around you that you want to lift even higher than yourself. And so I think that's the advice I would give myself.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, man, for being on. This has been a lot of fun. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on social media, but the easiest way to do all of this is to simply go to links.co/WTT podcast, and that's links with 2 i's.co/WTT podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a shout out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you so very much for everything, as well as Aurora 911 for bringing me in. This has been awesome this week. You can see this on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn Live and X, and then you can listen audio-wise 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.
You just listened to a Code 7 Network podcast. If you have any questions or would like to be a guest on the show, send an email to wttpodcast@gmail.com.